With my previous videos about Hmong movies, I mainly focused on the content I grew up with, and gave viewers a glimpse into what Hmong filmmakers had created and what else we were capable of doing. With the month of May being Asian American and Pacific Islander month, I figured I'd make another video about my own ethnicity, but share more of my thoughts on the idea of how Hmong people are represented in movies. I've already talked about the ones I grew up watching. However, I should add that in my preteen years, I grew out of touch with them and stopped caring. They just felt formulaic. Comedies were less appealing, the action genre kinda hit a dead end somewhere along the line, horror was not anything I wanted to look at, and everything just kind of blended all together. I had way more interest in American and Asian cinema around this time. X-Men Origins Wolverine, Ong Bak 2, A Fistful of Dollars, The Man from Nowhere. Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, and Donnie Yen were the pinnacle of Asian representation for me. And, let's not also forget, YouTube was the website for Asian creators back then. YouTube channels like Kev Jumba, Nigahiga, Mai Chani, David So, David Choi Music, and Just Kidding Films gave me a sense of Asian pride, and I felt empowered through them. But I did still have my Hmong pride that was left to be satisfied. I suppose my standards for movies in general were also higher, and so was my Hmong pride in the field of their filmmaking. But if you ask me how I would define Hmong pride, it's less about being proud of my culture and roots, but more about how do I, a Hmong American, fit into this world. Fast forward to when I'm 10 to 11 years old, I hear from one of my uncles by word of mouth that Clint Eastwood, the badass cowboy whose name Marty McFly made his own in Back to the Future 3, was making a movie about Hmong people. This really surprised me. My entire life I knew I was Hmong, or Asian, if I wanted to be cool or simple about my ethnicity, but it never occurred to me that people, especially Hollywood actors like Clint Eastwood, would want to know about how I live and what my life was like. I mean, it's not too different from everyone else, or so my preteen self thought at the time. The only things that probably differentiate me from my non-Asian neighbors is doing loud or shaman rituals in my house, where a lot of family members come by to visit or help, and you're exposed to slaughtering animals for the feast with your own hands at a young age. So when I finally watched Gran Torino on DVD and heard my native language being spoken in a movie with Hollywood cowboy badass Clint Eastwood, I felt represented. But I was not aware of the white savior trope or how Hollywood tends to fantasize certain elements of cultures to make them exotic or mythical. That realization would come later. Aside from the slice of life type movie that Gran Torino was, it made me happy to see that I, a Hmong person, was being represented in the land of Hollywood. It was cool. We made it. One for the history books. 10 years later, this was when the idea of representation made more sense to me through Justin Chan's Gook. Gook is an amazing film that shows not only the struggles, but the connectivity between various communities. This movie had so much heart and heartache within it that it made me yearn to see a story with that kind of love and care from the Hmong American perspective. I luckily had the good fortune to ask Justin a question when he was on the Fun with Them podcast talking about his movie Blue Bayou. For Justin, so I'm kind of doing screenwriting and all that, and how do you draw from your Asian American experience, since almost it can be like almost the same? So how do you tread so it's at least your own experience and not like kind of almost like it's been done before?
Oh, like a
Basically,
general Asian experience.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
That's
I
actually a
see.
pretty good question, actually.
Yeah. That is a good
That's a
question.
really good question. I like that.
Yeah. Are you Hmong?
Yeah.
So, it's you gotta well, he's from Minnesota.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was like,
but like you gotta there's what I gotta say is there's something so unique about your experience that nobody knows about yet. Nobody knows what it's like to be Hmong and be relocated to Minnesota, St. Paul, or Fresno, or any of those places where you guys are from. So that in itself is super beautiful to see on screen. Now, the question you have is like, how do you make it unlike every other experience? Well, that needs to come from your truth, right? It needs to come from somewhere that is your truth, and it needs to be very specific, right? So we've seen these films, Minari, The Farewell. The reason why they're so beautiful is that's their personal experience. That is their personal experience, and it comes from somewhere so real that it becomes undeniable. And within that specificity, it becomes a universal story because everybody can see their humanity through your story. Because, you know, feeling unwanted, feeling alienated, having a mother and father, these are all universal things, like going through a family death, you know, like all these things. Everybody knows how to relate with that. It's just within the specificity of your particular story is what's going to make it beautiful.
And I agree with that. And just to add on to that, just certain scenes or dialogue makes it different or makes the person different. I noticed that, you know, you watch a film and you get the general gist of whatever it is. Like Minari, a lot of us grew up with those kind of parents, right? But it was like little lines, just one line, you know, like the white kid being like racist or something, saying a racist line afterwards, like, gonna go play at my house. Like that resonated with me because it was just like, yeah, you've had these moments, and I like that they didn't just turn it into, oh, it's gonna just be like a racist kid being racist and this house.
You bring up a really good point though. Like also, let the pendulum swing, and what that means is like, don't just make it so dark and so just heavy. Like bring some levity to it. Show like that's the full spectrum of the human experience. Because if you look at Farewell and Minari, they're also funny as hell.
Yeah,
they're also funny. Like how do you take, you know, like hardships and also laugh at that too? And I think that's a good equalizer. It's a good equalizer. But those little lines that you're talking about, that's what made me connect. Yeah, the penis line. Remember in Minari, the grandma.
Oh yeah.
You know this. you know you gotta kill him with some comedy as well. But like, I don't know. It's a hard question, but that's, you know.
That was great.
There's like these honest and personal moments that you think you're the only one that has that experience, but then turns out, you know, a lot of people did. Like one moment that stands out for me, it's not a movie, but David Cho talks about having like, when all his family is out of the house, he took out pieces of porno and just scattered it on his bed. And he would jerk off and look at every little piece in his collection. And I thought I was the only one who did that.
This put a lot of things into perspective for me. And the feeling I once had for Gran Torino as the pinnacle of Hmong representation for me at the time was broadened. It told me we should not settle for this. We could do better. And we did. Thanks to Dua Mua writing The Harvest. At the time of recording this video, I have not seen it yet since I was unable to catch a local screening of it, but the trailer gives me a great enough impression about the story, especially the synopsis. As cultural traditions are slowly becoming a burden of the past, a son returns home knowing that family is the only thing that binds him and his ailing father together. But from the trailer I watched, this is the impression that I had. An ill but stubborn father is struggling with his health, while his son, who has made a life for himself, has to return home in order to take up the duties of his father as the head of the household. This becomes the overarching conflict in the movie, where Dua's character is torn between living a normal American life and trying to maintain his Hmong roots. There is way more truth and representation from a movie like this. Sure, it doesn't hurt to have fun or even goofy Hmong movies once in a while, but if we want to truly tell our stories like everyone else, sometimes it takes a bold movie like The Harvest to be one of the stepping stones to creating some more representation for Hmong people. Many other communities have done it for themselves, so why not us? Everything Everywhere All at Once won a lot of Oscars. RRR even got recognition. Korean media is super popular right now. Anime is bigger than it ever was before. Asian media is on the rise, and it can only go up from here. So, where do we fit in? Well, that's up to the creatives and creators within the Hmong community. It starts with us, but most importantly, it starts with you. Take that first step. Don't just represent your culture. Represent yourself. Represent your truth.